Oh my God. Good luck, all the best. Thank you.
Tournament officials planned for a lot of things: crowd management, court assignments, security, logistics. What they apparently did not plan for was a practice session causing more chaos than the actual matches. Alexandra Eala has not played a single competitive point at the 2026 Miami Open yet, and she is already the most talked about person in the entire building. The WTA has no idea what to do with this. Drop a comment below. Do you think the WTA is doing enough to put Alexandra Eala front and center, or are they still treating her popularity like a surprise they did not see coming? Tell us what you think. Let's talk about what a practice session is supposed to look like. A handful of spectators wander past. Maybe a few dedicated fans find a spot near the fence and watch for a bit. The player hits for an hour, works through some patterns with their coach, stretches, and disappears back into the locker room. Nobody adjusts their schedule. Nobody moves across the venue. Security does not have to rethink their positioning. It is just a practice session. It is background activity at a tournament where the actual matches are the main event. That is what a practice session looks like for almost every player at the 2026 Miami Open. And then there is Alexandra Eala. Where are you guys from? Huh? Where you from? LA. Okay. So, nice little 2-hour drive. What's your name? Andrew. Last name? Rivera. Rivera. Ah. So, you came all the way here. Are you going to get to watch your matches, or I've been coming to SER for 10 years? Oh wow. So now you have someone to cheer for. Finally have a Filipino here. Awesome. You get a Layla selfie also. Fans arrived early to secure viewing spots along the fence. They filled whatever bleacher seating existed near the practice court. Phones came out. Cameras started rolling before she had even hit a single ball. Some people reportedly waited over an hour just to make sure they had a decent spot to watch her warm up. And on nearby courts, players ranked significantly higher than her were practicing in front of noticeably smaller crowds. Read that last part again because it is the detail that matters most. Players ranked higher. Players with more titles. Players with longer careers and bigger trophy collections practicing nearby smaller crowds, while a 20-year-old seated 32nd in the tournament was causing the kind of crowd movement that tournament staff had to adjust their routines to accommodate. That is not a normal situation. That is not something that happens based on rankings or seedings or any of the traditional metrics the tennis world uses to decide who deserves the most attention. What happened on those practice courts in Miami was the fans making a decision completely independent of the official hierarchy, and the leaderboard following them without apology. The WTA's job at a tournament like this is to manage the product, make sure the right courts get the right matches, the right players get the right promotional resources, and the event runs smoothly enough that everyone goes home happy. What they were not prepared for was a player whose presence on a practice court reorganizes the movement patterns of thousands of fans before the tournament has even started. The scheduling conversations, the court assignment discussions, the quiet questions from tournament officials about how to handle the crowd management. All of it points to an organization dealing with a situation that did not come from their playbook because their playbook is built around rankings. Seed 1 gets center court. Seed 2 gets the second biggest stage. The rest get distributed accordingly. It is a logical system that works fine when the player generating the most fan interest is also the player ranked first in the world. It starts to break down when the player generating the most fan interest is seeded 32nd. Now, let's put the practice session story in the context of what the online numbers have been saying, because the two things together paint a picture that is impossible to dismiss as coincidence or regional enthusiasm. A day in the life training video featuring Eala crossed nearly 100,000 views. Not a match highlight from a major tournament. Not a behind-the-scenes clip from a Grand Slam, a training video, routine footage of a player preparing for competition. The kind of content that most professional athletes post and then quietly forget about because the engagement numbers are too modest to celebrate publicly. For Eala, that content is performing like it belongs to a player who has spent a decade building a global following. The audience is there, it is engaged, and it is showing up consistently across everything she posts, regardless of what the content actually is. That kind of baseline engagement is what sponsors pay enormous money to access. It is also the kind of engagement that does not happen by accident and cannot be manufactured through marketing. It exists because a large number of people genuinely care about following her career in real time. The Australian Open earlier this year provided the data point that made the tennis industry sit up properly. Her pre-tournament press conference generated over 173,000 views at an event that also featured Novak Djokovic, Aryna Sabalenka, and Iga Swiatek. Her press conference, a sitting down and answering questions press conference, outperformed the press conferences of players who have collectively won more Grand Slams than most eras of the sport produced. That number was not a fluke. It was confirmation of something that had been building for months and was now impossible to explain away. The comparison that kept appearing in tennis discussions around that time was Emma Raducanu at the 2021 US Open. Raducanu was a qualifier who won the entire tournament without dropping a set, which is one of the most statistically improbable performances in the history of the sport. The story captured audiences who had never watched a tennis match before. Brands scrambled. Media coverage exploded. The sport briefly reached people it had never reached before because one unexpected story broke through the noise in a way that the usual marketing apparatus could never replicate. The analysts drawing comparisons between that moment and what ELA is building are not being reckless. The pattern is genuinely similar. A young player, a compelling story, a rapidly expanding audience across regions that tennis has historically struggled to penetrate. The difference is that Raducanu's moment was concentrated in 2 weeks at one tournament. Eala's rise has been sustained across multiple tournaments, multiple continents, and multiple months. It has not faded after a first loss or a difficult stretch. It has continued building. And the reason it has continued building comes back to something that rankings and trophy counts simply cannot capture. Connection. Real, genuine, emotionally invested connection between a player and an audience that feels personally represented by her presence in the sport. The Philippines has over 110 million people. It has a passionate, organized sports culture built around boxing and basketball and anything that produces national pride on a global stage. Tennis had not given that community a player to organize around at the elite level before Eala arrived. When she made her run at the 2025 Miami Open, beating Ede, Madison Keys, and Jelena Ostapenko as a wild card ranked 140th in the world. The Philippine sports community responded the way communities respond when something they have been waiting for finally happens. Loudly, completely, in a way that does not quiet down after the tournament ends. The Panoy Army, the name that has become shorthand for her organized fan base, is not a casual supporter group. These are people who stay in the stands past midnight for late match sessions that most tournament crowds have long since abandoned. They track her schedule across time zones. They travel. They fill whatever space she is in, whether that space is a practice court, a press conference room, or a stadium court that has been upgraded to accommodate the demand her presence creates. That kind of loyalty does not respond to rankings. It responds to identity. The Nike visit before Miami added another dimension to the story that the commercial side of the sport is clearly paying close attention to. Eala walking through the Nike headquarters in Oregon was not a routine promotional stop. The positioning of her image in promotional spaces alongside figures who represent the highest level of the sport's history was a deliberate signal from a brand that operates with long timelines and does not make casual statements. Nike is betting on a future that includes Alexandra Eala as one of the faces that defines it. When the world's biggest sports brand makes that bet publicly, every other brand in the ecosystem pays attention. The saga-inspired signature collection rumors that have circulated around her Nike relationship are worth taking seriously in that context. Custom signature collections are not created for players ranked 32nd in the world. They are created for cultural icons whose identities extend beyond their sport, and whose stories resonate with audiences that brands want to reach. The fact that those conversations are reportedly happening before Ye has won a WTA title says everything about what the commercial world sees when it looks at her trajectory. Sam Querrey said it on the Nothing Major podcast, and the comments spread immediately across tennis forums and media panels. Might currently be generating more global curiosity than Aina Sabalina. Querrey is a former top 10 professional who understands the sport from the inside. When he makes a comparison like that, it is not a throwaway line. It is an observation from someone who has watched tennis crowds for 2 decades and recognizes when something unusual is happening. Sabalenka has Grand Slam titles, years of top-level consistency, and a genuine global profile built on sustained excellence. Comparing a player with Eala's current resume to that level of star power in terms of pure attention generation is a bold statement. But the conversation it started was not about trophies. It was about which players people around the world are actively searching for, talking about, and gathering to watch. And on that specific question, the evidence from Miami's practice courts, from online video views, from press conference attendance numbers, and from the crowd migrations happening across the venue points, clearly in one direction. Former American pro Steve Johnson made it even simpler on the same podcast. He said, "Yes, she's the biggest draw in women's tennis right now. Not almost, not arguably, just yes." John Eisner connected it to something bigger. He talked about untapped markets and the power of having a star player emerge from a region that tennis had not traditionally reached. He said the crowds she generates are insane everywhere she goes. And he pointed out what should have been obvious to the sport a long time ago. If you can produce a star player who connects with markets the size of the Philippines and broader Southeast Asia, you have not just discovered a new player, you have opened a door that does not close. The Miami Open practice court situation is the most visible recent manifestation of all of this. But it is not the beginning of the story. It is the latest chapter in something that started in Miami 12 months ago, when a wild card walked in ranked 140th, and walked out ranked 75th, having beaten 3 Grand Slam champions. The WTA did not create this story. The rankings did not predict it. The marketing departments did not schedule it. The fans decided, and the fans are currently reorganizing themselves around a practice court in Miami while tournament officials quietly figure out how to manage something their playbook never prepared them for. When your practice session draws bigger crowds than other players' actual matches, the sport has to stop and pay attention. Alexandra Eala is not waiting for the WTA to recognize what she has built. The fans already made that decision for them. Hit that like button if you are here for this story. Subscribe for more and drop your Miami Open prediction in the comments right